Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack 4 Business Podcast. Over 250 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game. Are you ready to discover what your Knack 4 business truly is? Your hosts are Bernie Fransgrote from Creative Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc.
Today's topic is transforming chaos into clarity, secrets to retail success. From an audience perspective, how can business create a consistent brand experience and scale operations effectively while keeping their teams aligned with their goals? And that's what we're having our guest here for today. Our guest today is Youssef Botros, a seasoned business leader and founder of GRND Consulting, dedicated to helping businesses streamline their operations and develop impactful training programs for employees and managers. With a proven track record in retail, Youssef scaled a single Wind mobile franchise to 7 locations in just 3 years by replicating his success-driven formula. At Mobile Klinik, he spearheaded training and development, opening over 90 stores nationwide in 6 years, playing a key role in the company's $165 million acquisition by TELUS. Now through GRND Consulting, Youssef leverages his expertise to ensure businesses align their teams with their goals, creating consistent brand experiences and operational excellence. Beyond his professional achievements, Youssef is a proud new dad and an endurance running enthusiast, aspiring to compete a 100-mile race someday. Youssef, welcome. What is your favorite quote or saying, sir?
Hi, Bernie. Thanks for having me on. One of the quotes that I really love right now is, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea.
Can you walk us through your early days of Wind and the growth strategy that you scaled from 1 to 7 in just 3 years?
Yes, absolutely. Wind Mobile was a new entrant in the wireless market here in Canada. At that time, there was no such thing as unlimited plans and no contract. It was on the tail end of my career as a cellular expert at FutureShop. The plans and devices that I were selling were all tied to a contract, and clients didn't really have much say in the terms of their plans. So along comes Wind Mobile that had unlimited plans and no contract, and it changed the business model for the wireless industry completely. Because what that did is that it made sure that clients stayed because they wanted to, not because they had to. This was something that a lot of people were on board with, and it definitely shook up the industry. Through some of my connections, I actually met the CEO of Wind at the time, Ken Campbell, and it seemed like there were lots of good opportunities to open up a franchise. I became the general manager for a franchisee whom I worked for in the past. We started to really understand the business by scoping out the existing corporate locations in Canada. The good thing about that kind of experience was we were a franchisee, so there were a lot of things that were already done for us. The plans were done, the devices were already set. The store design is not something that we ever had to take care of. All we had to do was hire the employees, find accessories ourselves, and things like that. So it was a much smaller scope compared to some of the other experiences that I had. Our plan was to dominate the local franchisee market. We had a goal from the start to open multiple locations because of the opportunity we had. Once we opened our first location at the Bayshore Mall here in Ottawa, that went really well. People were really excited about it. Wind Mobile was investing a lot into their marketing. It picked up really quickly. The plans and deals we were offering to customers, buy one, get one device, those kinds of things were very attractive and encouraged us to open up many more. Actually putting the kiosks together was something I was doing. They came in 7, 8 pieces or something like that. And it was really just roll up your sleeves and get these shops open. So I wouldn't say there was much of a growth strategy as much as there was a will to open multiple locations and dominate from a company that already had a great product and a great brand promise.
When you were setting that up, putting up mall locations, how were you handling the leasing of that space? Did you have someone act on your behalf to help set up, or even acquiring the booth itself? think of trade show booths. They're bloody expensive. How do you make that all come together other than the good old-fashioned elbow grease?
It was a partnership with Zor, Win Mobile. We had a close relationship with the franchise manager. They gave you options. If you wanted to open a franchise, you had to have some sort of record, which the person I worked for had in the wireless business. That really helped a lot. They gave you the option of building the kiosk yourself or having them build it, especially in a startup. You got to make the most of the dollars you've got. When we found out the fees for building the kiosk, we just said, let's do it ourselves. We chose to be in locations where people were buying phones already. There's, I would say, 3 or 4 major malls here in Ottawa. So we wanted to open up in all of them. There were some external locations like strip malls where my previous boss had experienced. Specific factors helped us move along the way. Picking the locations that's good to be where your customers are. 90% of the devices bought and sold happen in a shopping mall here in Canada. It's very rare that you'll see somebody open up in a strip mall like you would see like in the States, just because of what our shopping infrastructure looks like here.
You have done an amazing job with Mobile Klinik. I remember seeing one in Kingston, and then all of a sudden they were everywhere. Can you tell us a little bit about what you attribute that to?
One thing that Mobile Klinik did was solve a very painful problem for customers. Because everybody has a smartphone, the addressable market was like 30 million people. Before Mobile Klinik's inception, the only way that you could repair your phone, as phones have been getting more expensive, was to either go back to the place where you bought it, your carrier. They would send it out. Sometimes you get a loaner, sometimes you don't get a loaner. Or you go to an accessory kiosk in the mall and they MacGyver it there for you. There wasn't another option for professional same-day smartphone repair. The absolute focus on solving that problem is something that Mobile Klinik did really well. And what also helped is that we took an existing business model from a company in France and adapted it to the Canadian market. Instead of having most of our shops in general areas in Europe where they don't have shopping malls like the way that we have them here, we took the setup, the kinds of tools they were using, the strategy and how to pick the best suppliers. We tailored it to a business model that would work here. Our proof of concept was in Saint Laurent. We had one store for about 6 months and we paid attention to every single day's numbers to see what was working, what was not working. And I had lots of time to prepare because of the relationships that the founders had with that company in France. They sent me to France and to Germany to train in those stores for 3 weeks. I went there and I soaked up everything I could. None of it was in English. So all of the documentation was in French or German, but technology is a great thing. And I was able to communicate with people through Google Translate and really got a sense for what the business was like, the challenges that they had. That was one of the things that really helped us, aside from the fact that the founders were really well experienced, really well connected. And the goal, at least when we first started, was to open up 60 locations nationwide, target almost every major mall in Canada. That quickly turned into 120 locations as the goal. And I left our store 91. I think Mobile Klinik today is well over 150 locations and they still operate independently, obviously with TELUS's support and backing. But those were the things I think that really helped drive the rapid growth. Is they focused on a very specific problem that happened to affect everybody.
One thing that seems to be your bread and butter that speaks to me is you think training was one of the key components to your success. Unpack that for me.
Yes. I think training is a key to success, especially in an industry where there's a specialized skill that you need to teach. I'm the co-founder for a company called Repair and Run right now, which does professional e-bike and e-scooter repair. Industries like this, where you are trying to monetize a skill and can't find experienced people, you have to teach the skill somehow. And so the training becomes even more important because if you can't do that properly, you can't execute on the thing that your brand promises, right? Even if you don't have a specialized skill, let's say coffee, for example. Well, there are like hundreds, thousands of other coffee shops. What makes any one business different than the other? One thing that Mobile Klinik did really well is they got everybody to fall in love with the brand first, to be aligned with their vision and values, and really help people understand what kind of brand personality the company has and how to be a good brand ambassador, not just be a good worker, but a person who can represent that company. Every time we did a store opening, we spent an entire day to talk about the company vision, values, and the brand. So I did that training personally, like at least 50 times myself. The person I reported to at Mobile Klinik used to fly around the country to do day one of that training because we thought it was so important. What we were trying to do here is not just fix phones. We're actually selling the technician, the expert you can go to give you the education you need. So when you take that brand experience, the brand personality, the vision, and you integrate that into your training, you turn people from employees into brand ambassadors. That transforms the customer experience significantly, because then it's not just about what you do, it's about why you do it. It's about the passion you have for technology. We made it a point to hire people who were aligned with our brand personality. So there's like another added layer of the brand experience that we had there, because we always were very selective of the people who worked for us because we wanted them to represent us at the highest level.
If you're starting up a business and you're scaling up and getting staff because you've done your brand ambassadorship yourself, how do you start shaping? How do you build that program out so that you have that training manual as you go, knowing you'll have to tweak it to keep up to date with any new versions or iterations of a product, or you add products, or you take products back and you fix them? How do you assemble that so it comes back and it's a process? Is that something the person does themselves? They hire out? What's the scoop on that?
So to build training, it actually requires more than one person. Typically, the entrepreneur is busy growing the business. To document their systems, it requires a knowledgeable worker, whoever that may be, and a systems champion, someone who can codify that so they can make it teachable to someone else. Typically, through my consulting, I act as the systems champion. I may not be familiar with the specific industry, but I am familiar with training. So I take all of the content that the entrepreneur would have, and I would put it into such that we can teach it. So training has an element of delivery, just like comedians need to work on their delivery. It's not just the content. The delivery matters a lot because people learn in lots of different kinds of ways. When you're looking at a training program, you're asking the question, what do people need to do or say in order to run the business independently? And not just do, the service, but also how do they represent me and my company? That means you have to know what your brand stands for, your brand personality, your vision, your values, all of that. And you also have to know how to deliver on the product or the service yourself before you teach it to somebody else. So what we do is we take a look at, especially within the brick and mortar world, usually there's about 2 positions that you need to create training for. A salesperson or a technician. The shop manager will need to know everything that the salesperson knows, but they have some additional responsibilities, doing hours or more administrative work, conflict resolution, things like that. When you understand the position you're making training for, you want to build SOPs and training in such a way that the person you hire becomes as productive as possible, as quickly as possible. At Mobile Klinik, because we expanded so quickly, we always asked ourselves, what does a technician need to know on day 1, week 1, month 1, and by 90 days, what do they need to know? Does that negate the fact that they still need to practice? No, everybody still needs hands-on for them to perfect the skill, but initial exposure to the material needs in such a way that you're learning like the really basic housekeeping things first, then things that are a little bit more complex. And then as they build their confidence and their skill level, then you teach them things that are a little bit more complicated. every single position in the company has its own unique process. Eventually, we created processes for all types of positions. Through my consulting and at Mobile Klinik, there were people who were not in a store. At 90 locations, you have a warehouse, stores or depots that just do refurbishing because we were buying and selling used phones. So there's all of these processes and they're unique to the person doing the job. You also need to create some sort of a feedback loop so that the person actually doing the work can tell you if this training is effective, relevant, and if it helps them do the work or if it's holding them back. Sometimes systems and SOPs are actually the thing that hold people rather than help them do the work. So in a nutshell, that's how we build training. And it's really just based on what is it that you need in your job at that brand standard, and you work back from there.
Two things pop into my head as you're describing that. One is you can't be the expert in all things. Let's say you're doing repairs on a piece of hardware. I'm gifted enough to take my computer apart. The gift doesn't usually come back in the same form that puts it back together again, though it's operational. And so if you're having an accounting piece, that training module, et cetera, how do you bring that in, especially if you're the solopreneur? And then the one other leg of the journey is if you're having a person, someone mentioned this in another podcast, at the end of the day, the customer comes first and you might have to make an allowance for some things. That's their customer service piece, that brand ambassador. How do you make sure that flows into that too?
So that's definitely something that's in the training, and communicating the values to your people help them navigate difficult situations like this. I have a story of this kind of exact scenario. When we had our third store open in downtown Toronto, it was in Commerce Court. So we had lots of people. This was under the bank buildings. So we had lots of people in suits, lawyers, people in finance, and the kinds of devices that came in because of the location of the store were very high-end devices, starting like maybe $1,000, $1,500 devices. The customer came in and he had, I think it was like a Samsung Note 5, very expensive. The screen itself was $500. He was very happy with the repair. And the moment that he walked across our list line, he drops his phone and it smashes. You can just hear the silence. Everybody was like, oh my God, what do we do now? This is not like you go to the beer store and drop your case of beer and they're like, okay, here you go. This is a $500 product. And you just spent all this time trying to fix this person's phone. I wasn't so experienced at the time. So I called my boss and I said, what should we do? If we fix this guy's phone free, we're going to lose money. He said, fix it anyways for free. You need to think of the big picture because this is not transactional. You're trying to get customers for life. That really stuck with me. We fixed that customer's phone for free. He was so appreciative that he continued to refer customers to us as long as that store was open. And I think that just goes to show sometimes you might have to be a little bit more lenient with your policies, especially if you're trying to build a reputation for being customer-centric. You're still dealing with people, and people need to come first, right? As long as they're not being malicious. And I can guarantee you, with some of the policies that we have, we had a lifetime warranty plastered all over our stores because it was one of the value propositions that we had. And there was such a big fight in, oh, we're going to lose money if somebody comes in and they have something wrong, like we have to fix it for free. And I can tell you from experience that it is a very small minority of people who will actually do that. It is really just more about making sure that people can trust you to fix their issue when they do have one. That's what separates the great companies from the average companies. Anyone can make a great product, but when that product fails, how is that situation handled? Stopped being a customer of some companies because of how they poorly mishandled some issues that I had when it could have been an easy fix. Because they were strict on their policies, I was just like, okay, I think you're missing the point. You're going to lose me as a customer forever. So definitely, I think teaching that to your people and making sure that you as a leader also follow that. You can't just be like, do as I say and not as I do. You really have to build a culture of customer first and include it in your training. And I think that's a winning formula.
Youssef, our listeners are at several different places in their learning cycle. So I always, when I hear an acronym, have them explain so no one ever feels foolish. What's an SOP?
An SOP is a standard operating procedure, and it is basically a set of instructions on how to do any one thing according to the company's objectives. I like to give this analogy because SOP is a part of a system. If you think about systems, you can use this analogy here. Let's say you wanted to get across the country. You need a driver, you need a truck or a vehicle, and you need a set of directions. Your SOP is the set of directions that you use to get to your destination.
So when you're tracking all this, what metrics do you hone in on for a brick and mortar location? Keeping in mind, the customer might surprise you with, I just dropped it outside the front door. Hey, can you help me? Which is going to eat into your profits for that day, but not in the long term. How do you track those metrics to make sure you're on target?
So every brick and mortar business will have some sort of an operating software, something that measures the work that they're doing. At Mobile Klinik, we used a software called RepairQ, which is very repair specific. And there were lots of reports that we can pull to really understand our business from a store level, provincial level, regional level, and on a national level. No matter what kind of system you use, it is really important to make sure that the data you put in is of good quality. Because if the data is not good quality, it doesn't matter how good the system is. And that is a shared responsibility between the people in your stores and the people making the SOPs. You don't necessarily need to systemize every single thing in your business. It's actually a really bad strategy. What you need to do is systemize the things that matter most and that will push your business forward. When we were making sure that we can track everything, we put some specific fields in our software as mandatory, taught people that these are the things that we're looking for all of these reasons. And we gave people a higher purpose, something to shoot towards beyond the fact that they should hit these specific numbers every single month. It was always tied to a vision or an overarching goal of some kind. And I think that worked really well, especially with the kind of leadership that we had. But every business has different KPIs based on the industry that they're in. Overall, though, the things that they should be looking at is your overall operational numbers, which you can find in a profit and loss statement every single month. And that is the number one financial report that we were looking at. And we got our teams to look at those reports with us, even down to the store manager, because they affected that number directly. When we showed them that their labor was really high, they could see that they had influence over this number and tweaked their scheduling, for example. Again, I think the P&L is the thing that every business will encounter because every business produces a P&L in some, but the actual KPIs that affect your revenue will be different from one business to another.
I'm really interested, Youssef. I think Mobile Klinik has done a rather interesting ability at creating that culture, because I've actually been in the store. How do you go beyond competent employee to creating an environment of culture and aligning with the company's ethics?
I think that's where I got the name for my company, GRND Consulting. GRIND is an acronym for growth and development. And that's something we did really well at Mobile Klinik. You build the people and the people build the business. When we hired all of our teams, like the technicians, the managers, that was just like the beginning of it. We sold them on the brand promise and the growth opportunity. Once they were hired, you have to deliver on those promises, which means you have to invest in their training, you have to invest in their development, in their career goals. And as the company grew, it wasn't just you can either be a manager of the shop or a regional manager. There were other teams that were created. There was a financial team, there was a marketing team, there's my team, the learning and development team. These people became the support, we called them field support specialists, who supported all operating stores and helped open new locations within that same region. You have to be in touch with the motivations of your people and their natural skill set, because everybody has different skills. Understanding that is really important. It helps you motivate people by giving them a clear path of development, but also giving them the confidence that they need, giving them the recognition when they do something really well. Our SOPs were not to catch people doing something wrong, but to catch them doing something right. Those are the words of the person I used to work for, who I consider a mentor even today. So it was something that was always active in our culture. Growth, development, innovation was something that was like really important to us. And I think hiring somebody is just the first step, but having one-on-ones with your staff, weekly meetings, and making sure people are constantly aligned with the goals and the brand were done really well. Any company can do this. However, I see some clients of mine and maybe other businesses as well who kind of just get to work and they're like, we don't have time to plan. Let's just do the work. Why are we planning? If you're planning, you're not working and you're not producing. There's a quote by Abraham Lincoln, if I'm not wrong. If you give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I will spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe. It goes to show that it's not just about putting rubber to the road. You really have to put a lot of thought and effort into the training, into the planning, so that you can execute properly. And execution is everything in the brick and mortar business. You can promise the world, but if the customer walks into your store and you can't execute on that, you lose that customer forever. We always made sure that our people came first. We supported them in their goals, especially when they struggled. That was my team's job. Through that relationship and the mutually built trust, I think that's where the magic happened.
Knowing that people can be unique in their own style. Some people can be the accountant. Other people are the social butterfly or of the high empathic value or EQ. Some people like to be in the weeds and some people like to have the large oversight. They're not into that deep level of detail. And sometimes that generates friction. How do you manage that? How do you make sure that everybody is in harmony?
That's a great question. I don't think it's necessarily bad to be in the weeds if that is your job. That was certainly my job, and I had to think about every kind of iteration for an SOP and its impact. What really helped is making sure that we knew what the meeting was about, if we had a meeting, and making sure that we had some sort of an objective and a way to communicate our disagreements. My boss always used to say, if we always agree with each other, like, why do we need each other? It's important sometimes to disagree because you get different perspectives. It's really how you come out of those disagreements. Communication skills is something that we started to invest in. We put a lot of work into our managers. There are such things as bad ideas, but as long as we had that in our minds, it's okay to disagree. Once we did agree on something, the expectation was that everybody was on the same team. If we had a goal, it was everybody's responsibility to support that goal until the next meeting where we could have disagreements. That is actually the best medium in which to have those debates, is in planning meetings. It's really when we committed to something as a team where we expect alignment, right? They still disagree and then you're at the shop toxic and customers notice. That's what you want to avoid. Sometimes we did have to let go of people who were not aligned with us. I know I've hired people in my day who were fantastic technicians, but just could not get their head around the customer first principle we had. They always fought back against the customer because it was against our policy for them to do this, that, and the other thing. Some people can't really get their head around it. They can't really get behind those types of values. And that's okay. They just don't belong in the company. They can go to another company where they have other values that they can align with. I think one thing about building a brand is that you start to attract people who align with your brand to work for you. You also start to attract a particular kind of customer who resonate with your brand in a way.
I've been told that the worst expansion period is the second store. They can run one store. You can run 5 stores. But the second store is fatal. Well, how do you recommend companies outgrow and expand when they may not have the resources of a national footprint?
That's a great question. Funny enough, we actually closed our second location. The good news is when we came to investors and raising money, we knew very quickly what didn't work. And we actually told investors right away to get ahead of the elephant in the room. When you are looking at expanding beyond one location, you really need to know your business model and you need to objectively know what is working about that store and what is not working. For entrepreneurs, that's really hard because they have an emotional attachment to their business. What they think could be working may have nothing to do with their business. It's just a correlation, not causation. To be objective, you need a control group or a measure of some kind. What we thought was a great location when we first opened our second store ended up being horrible. A common mistake is that we had run a business in that particular location previously, but the average customer in that mall had changed since we last had a business there. We made the grave mistake of saying, if it was great 5 years ago, it'll be great now. It was a sobering fact for us that we really need to understand what makes a great location. And at that moment, we actually started to build a location evaluation sheet for all of our locations. We knew what kind of malls we wanted to be in, A, B, or C malls, but where in the mall was also up for debate. We took a look at factors like how many carriers are in there, which hallway is it? Is there an anchor store like the Bay or Sears or whatever, Rona? Are there other high traffic locations where people go to regularly near our store, like a coffee shop or something like that? Is there a transit station close by? We took all of these factors and we weighted them. And so it helped us choose locations much more strategically. And more often than not, it was something that really helped us along the way.
Very smart, right? That's a great way to do the analysis. Footfall, what's it going to look like? At the end of the day, from a GRND Consulting Services, what are the key points you want people to realize as they're evolving their business? The KPIs, key performance indicators, are part of it. SOPs, standard operating procedures, are part of it. What other elements? There's the people factor, there's the business factor, and the art of distinction. How would you marry this up into one kind of a summation?
COVID made me realize that people are looking for more than just a workplace. They're looking for more than just fair compensation. They're looking to be part of a story, part of a brand, and to belong to a culture. Businesses that are not doing that are not only going to not find great employees, but they're going to have trouble connecting with their customers. Brand needs to be at the center of everything. From a business perspective, your business needs to solve a problem, right? And understanding the problem well is halfway to finding a solution. If you don't understand the problem well and you don't know how to communicate it, then it's tough. Focusing on the problem and integrating your brand will really help separate you from the competition. It will also attract the kind of people who you want to work for you. It will also build a raving network of customers if you are able to communicate that brand through your marketing, through your customer experience. Then and only then can we talk about systems and training, which is where the operations come in. You have to have systems that help you move the business forward. And like I said before, the systems are a combination of three things: people, SOPs, and the tools and technology. The training is how do you teach how to run that system to the people who are working for you so that you can focus on more important things like opening more locations, growing business, establishing partnerships that help fuel the business growth. So in a nutshell, focus on the problem, integrate your brand, and especially in the brick and mortar world, like people is everything.
So Youssef, if a customer wants to get beyond the regular grind, how do they get a hold of you?
So they can reach me through my website. I have a couple of things that they could take advantage of, some quizzes to help them understand where they may be in their journey. So I help customers do one of three things: either open their first location, hire a business manager so that they can focus on higher value tasks, or expand their business beyond one location. They can also reach me on LinkedIn, and we can book a call, we can chat and see how I can help them.
Youssef, one other question to ask you. How far is your reach? Are you just the Ottawa Valley? Are you provincial, national, continental, or global?
I can help anybody in Canada and the US, and typically that's where I like to work. However, I have talked with clients internationally. The reason why I focus on Canada and the US is because the shopping, retail, the brick and mortar experience is fairly the same. So it's easy to take strategies from one place to another and not have to make too many modifications. Obviously, there are always going to be different local or municipal laws that you have to take into account. And that's something that need to be tailored to fit that business. But from a customer perspective, people in Canada and the US are fairly the same as far as how they shop. So I'll tell customers, if you help people in person, or if you have customers that walk in your door and you have four walls, I'd like to think that I could help you.
I want to say thank you to Youssef Botros, my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. If you're starting up or you're scaling up your business and you're in the brick and mortar portion of life, Youssef's the person to work with you. He has the backstory and he has the experience.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people: Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert; Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host; Jovan Strika from @Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space; then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner; and Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer: please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.